Well, I think it's due time that we smoke ourselves a brisket. So I got a couple of briskets. Got two 15-pound briskets that we're going to be smoking. So the goal is we're going to smoke it until it gets a really good bark. Then we're going to wrap it, finish it to temperature. We're going to take them out, just let them rest for a little bit. Then we're going to wrap them in cellophane. And then we're going to put them into a hot box. And we're going to let them rest all night, and they'll be ready Saturday. But you can just take it out, let it rest either 2 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Effectively what you want is the internal temperature of that brisket to get back down to about 170, 150 degrees. And then at that point you can start cutting it and serving it, right? Just depending on your time constraints or when you have to have this food ready, like this brisket, it's always a good idea to probably cook it the day before. You know, if we're gonna do, this is a 15-pound brisket untrimmed, I would imagine we're probably gonna take off about 2 pounds or so, which would give us somewhere around 13 pounds. So like 2 to 3 pounds is probably what we're gonna take off. So we'll have anywhere from a 12 to 13-pound brisket, which they usually recommend about an hour and a half per pound. So this could very well be an all-day smoke, right? So if you're going to try to smoke a brisket and have it ready, you know, for dinner, it's probably not going to happen unless you really increase your temperature, and instead of cooking it low and slow, you're going to cook it hot and fast, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to border on a very in between of cooking low and slow and hot and fast. We're going to raise the temperature up. What we're going to try to do is get these briskets done in about 10 hours. Then we're going to wrap them and we're going to just let them rest all night. And then we're going to go from there. First thing though, we got to trim some briskets. I got two big old briskets right here. And I got from our local grocery store, HEB, and I'll tell you what the price is here in just a minute. So I got from our local HEB a Packer style, really, just your brisket. And it is right here 15.8 pounds, and it was $4.46 a pound. Then we got a prime brisket, and that one was, or is, 15.62, and that one's running $5.49 a pound, so about $1 more per pound. Okay, price difference on this about $15 between these two. So something else new that we're going to be doing is taking the trimmings and we're going to render the beef tallow out of them. Now we're going to use that beef tallow when we're about to wrap our briskets. We're just going to douse it like crazy, right? If depending on how much we have, you know, I'm going to go ahead and filter it, but depending on how much we have, we'll just kind of keep it in a jar, and we can use that for other things. You know, you can make some flour tortillas. You could fry your corn tortillas in them, stuff like that. You know, it gives a lot better flavor. So we're going to go ahead and get these trimmed. Let's get that done. I will show you briefly how I'm going to trim my brisket. I'm not the most professional at doing it, but I do a pretty good job. We're just trying to get some of that decal fat off, because when we put the rub on it, we want the rub and the seasoning to really soak into the meat, right? We don't want it to be stuck on the fat. One thing to keep in mind with briskets, the fat cap that is in between the point and the flat is more than enough to keep your briskets moist, particularly when you're going to wrap them and finish cooking them like that. So don't be afraid of taking off some of that fat from the top, you know, and getting it down kind of thin. You don't want to take it all off, because that will help render on the outside and let some of that smoky flavor stick to your seasoning and to the protein. So let's just go ahead and get them trimmed. Let's get that ready, and then we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's go ahead and get that opened up. Oh, y'all guys stay back. I don't need no help. Always remember, guys, a sharp knife is a safe knife, which means you're not going to be fighting a knife and figuring it out. It should cut very, very nicely. Remember, we got to get all this off. The sharper your knife, the better. Just be careful. Don't cut yourself. Been there many times. This is all that fat that I'm talking about that we're basically going to keep. and we're going to render down all the tallow out of it. And you know, in the past I would just throw it away. I know, but not this time. From my understanding, we want to take a brisket, and you see this really thin stuff right here? We want to really cut that out, because all that's going to happen is that this right here is going to dry up, okay? So it's going to dry up, and then it's not very aerodynamic to let the smoke come across your protein. So we're basically going to take this brisket, and you see how square it is right here? We're going to take this and we're going to round it out. Real nice, smooth, round radius on it like that. Going to make it look really good. Kind of like, it's going to look like a shoe, basically, right? We're going to cut it just like this. We'll continue to trim off any excess fat, and then that preps us up here. The plus side to taking this off is that we get it thicker, so that when the heat starts to hit it, it'll shrink it up and bring it in. So we won't have to worry about this drying out. Now, usually what I'll do, and some people do it different things, but what I do is I take these pieces that come off, and I cut them into strips. I don't put any seasoning on them. I smoke them just straight, and I give it to my dogs. So let's go ahead and take that off, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, you see the difference now? Just by doing that. Now I'll probably still come up and trim up a little bit once I flip it around, but now look at that, how round it is, okay? This is what we're looking for, so that when we're cooking, or when that heat is starting to hit this brisket, it isn't gonna have any harsh corners. So we're actually gonna trim these corners down too, just like this, and we're gonna round them out, right? So again, no harsh edges. You want to get the edges off. You want to get this thin stuff out of here. All right, you see how thin that is? You don't want that on that brisket when you're smoking it, because all it's going to do is just dry out. All right, so that's not what we're wanting to do. Okay, so we're going to come in again. Like I said, we're just going to trim. I want to take off some of these rough edges here. Just like that. And I'm not going to do it, you know, like the really professional pit masters do. We're just going to do it to where I know we're not going to have any spots that are going to want to burn. Okay. So again, any of the fat that you trim off, save that, because we're going to render that out. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this side. Just, you know, pretty quick. That was nice, easy trim. Let's go ahead and flip this around. This is where you get all that extra. This is where you get all that extra fat that you want to take out. And we're still going to trim this side up too, so we can go ahead and cut this corner off really quick. Just think sweeping motions, okay? No harsh corners. Let's go ahead and start taking some of this fat off. Now I know there are a lot of different techniques, a lot of different ways to trim briskets. Well, maybe not that many different ways, but I know there are a lot of different techniques that people use on how they do it. I'm trying to get it to a point where we have removed enough of the fat where it's an acceptable amount on there so that we can season it. Because to be honest, I like the flavor of whatever rub or seasoning I put on to be in the meat and not just on the surface or the fat. Okay, and I don't really like a whole lot of fat on my brisket. I do like the moist part of the brisket, the marbled part, but I don't like all that fat that's on top. You know, I don't like all that extra. So I'm not particularly a fan of barbecue joints that leave too much on there. So I like to take off enough that I'm happy with it and that I know I'm not just going to be taking a bite full of fat. So we're trying to get that off. You see how we're starting to see the fibers in here now? That's kind of what I like. Now you do it however you feel comfortable. I would say the biggest takeaway are those corners and those edges. Like right here, we got ourselves a little sharp corner here. So we're actually going to take that out and we're going to go around just like that, right? So now it's smooth, just right there. And then we're going to also take this chunk out right here at this top, because this is going to be a spot that's going to tend to want to dry out, okay? So we can go ahead and cut that piece off. I'm just going to go straight at it just like that. The other thing I like about being able to see this is this exposes some of that meat right there underneath that fat, so that when we put our seasoning, we're gonna put it in heavy, and it's gonna let it soak in through there. I can already tell this is gonna be a spot that's the really good stuff. Okay, so let's keep on going. So the brisket is now starting to take shape. It's looking pretty good. Take a look at it. I guess if you had to really compare it to something, what you want it to look like is a tongue, I guess. You know, we're taking some of those harsh edges off, getting some of that fat off of there as well, because again, we want the seasoning to penetrate into the protein. Okay, so far so good. We'll keep on going on a couple of these corners and smoothing them out. But I like what I'm seeing. All right, now we got it. Very good looking, presentable brisket. And usually it's recommended 1.5 hours per pound, but we're going to ramp up the temp a little bit. We're going to run at about 275, and we'll smoke it at that. And then once we wrap it, we'll increase the temperature just a little bit more. And we're going to try to do this in about 10 hours. The number we're looking for is 203 degrees. Let's move on to the next one. Before I put the rub and season them, I'm going to go ahead and take all of the fat that we just cut off. And I actually was on a live a few days ago where someone actually recommended that we cut these pieces up into smaller pieces so that they render faster, easier. So we're going to go ahead and cut whatever big pieces we have into like 1-inch squares. And I will tell you, be careful as you cut this, because this part is really slippery. But this is where having that sharp knife comes in play. So we're going to go ahead and take all the big heavy fat pieces, and let's get all the fat, as much of it as we can, because that's what we're going to render out. Let me get this part knocked out, and then we'll come back and put the rub on. And I actually got some rub that a customer had brought to. His name is Jeff Capsiak. I've used this before on some dino beef ribs, and it came out amazing. But I got 2 of them, so they're both what he calls a big meaty. So this one's a big meaty 300, and then this is the big meaty chipotle. So I'm not going to put any binder on it. I am going to season these up and let them rest overnight. So I'm not. They're going to have plenty of time to sweat and let this flavor soak in. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm just gonna give it a really generous coating, okay? Gonna go in here. Yeah, some of it's sticking a little bit. We're gonna put it on nice and thick. Because we want a lot of flavor. And then what you want to do is just press it in, okay? Press it in there. Really, really good. And don't forget to get the sides. You want that bark to build everywhere. And we want that rub to help. Ready to go to the other side. Now, depending on whatever rub or seasoning you use, I do recommend that when you're pouring it, give it a good shake, you know, because things settle when you're shaking, right? Or when you're applying it to your meat. So shake it up. That way you get a good mix of the rub in its entirety. Now, when I put it in the smoker tomorrow, the direction that this brisket is facing, right? So this is up, I want this up. So I'm just gonna grab it and I'm gonna gently place it onto the grill grate. But I'm gonna go ahead and let it rest in here with the seasoning in the direction that I want it at, okay? All right, that one is ready. Let's get the other one. We're going to put these in the fridge. We're going to let them rest overnight. This is pretty much how I get my briskets ready. And of course, you can use any seasoning or rub that you like, that you have, or something that you've curated yourself. There is no wrong answer to it, other than if you don't like it, then that's probably the wrong answer, or the wrong result, or not what you're looking for. So we're going to go ahead and smoke these tomorrow. We're going to light up a 250-gallon smoker pit, our Overlander, and we're going to get these briskets cooked. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe and follow us. If you got any questions or you have any comments, put them down below. And we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.